There is a certain kind of man who does not chase, does not beg, does not explain. He sits in silence, still and centered, needing no applause, no company, and no validation. At first glance, the world sees him as distant, cold, perhaps even arrogant. But beneath that stillness lies something society is not ready to face. A man who no longer seeks himself in others. In a world addicted to noise, his quiet is threatening. In a culture obsessed with approval, his detachment is unsettling. He is not bitter, he is not broken, he is simply free. And that freedom terrifies those still trapped in roles they never chose. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the sacred journey of separating from the collective mind in order to find the self. This man is no longer living through the projections of others. He has stopped performing for the comfort of the crowd. He has withdrawn his energy from the persona, the social mask, and begun the descent into his own depths. And that descent makes him unpredictable, ungovernable, and psychologically untouchable. He no longer plays by the unconscious rules that govern most relationships. To the world, he seems like a ghost, refusing to haunt the same stories. But to those who understand Jung, he is a soul awakening, turning inward, not out of despair, but out of devotion to something real. In a society that thrives on conformity, a man who no longer needs anyone becomes the greatest disruption. Because once he finds himself, no one can use him, define him, or own him again. And that is what makes him dangerous. Not to others, but to the illusions they still cling to. In today's world, the moment you wake up, someone is already telling you who you should be. The billboards, the algorithms, the scrolling feeds. They all whisper the same lie. You are not enough unless you become more like them. In America, this illusion has become a silent epidemic. The pressure to look younger, earn more, be in a relationship, have more followers, do more, never rest, has created a society starving for approval while drowning in anxiety. This is not self-improvement. This is self-erasure. Carl Jung warned us of this exact danger. He called it the fusion with the persona, the carefully crafted mask we wear to fit in, to be liked, to belong. It begins innocently, a compliment here, a disapproval there, a subtle correction to your authentic self. And before long you forget where the performance ends and your truth begins. You smile when you want to cry. You agree when your soul says no. You live a life curated for others, all while slowly losing your own voice. This illusion isn't just personal, it is systemic. It's built into everything from social media to job applications, from dating profiles to corporate branding. Every message says the same thing: be what the world wants or risk being forgotten. But Jung knew the truth. When you live only for the persona, the self goes into hiding. You become a ghost in your own life, haunting spaces that never truly see you. Yet healing begins the moment you stop chasing who you should be and start remembering who you are. You don't need louder applause, you need deeper roots. You don't need more validation, you need more truth. When you dare to step back from the noise and ask, "Is this really me?" you awaken something sacred. That question is not rebellion, it is the beginning of individuation, the return to the self beneath the social mask. You were never meant to be a product for someone else's consumption. You were meant to be a presence. And once you reclaim that presence, the world loses its grip on you. In a world trained to reward obedience, the man who does not seek approval becomes a silent disruption. He no longer flinches at rejection, no longer bends to collective pressure, no longer performs to win favor. And this unnerves people. In recent years, we've seen the rise of quiet resistance, individuals walking away from high-paying jobs, ending performative relationships, turning off the noise of digital validation, and choosing peace over popularity. Some call it detachment. Jung would call it the rupture, a sacred tearing away from the collective psyche that once defined your worth. This rupture is not about defiance, it is about awakening. When you stop asking for permission to exist as you are, the illusion of control others had over you begins to dissolve. You are no longer swayed by guilt, shame, or comparison. You stop dancing to the rhythm of someone else's fear. And that, to a world built on conformity, feels dangerous, because the liberated soul cannot be bought, manipulated, or pacified. Carl Jung taught that freedom begins not with outward rebellion, but with inner sovereignty. The moment you say, "I do not need to be who you need me to be," you sever the invisible strings tied to the collective unconscious. You step out of the role assigned to you, and in that sacred refusal, you reclaim your authentic voice. But this inner revolution can be deeply unsettling to those still clinging to the system. They may label you cold, arrogant, and selfish. They may retreat, reject, or resist, not because you have wronged them, but because your freedom reminds them of their own silence. Yet, this path is not about isolation, it is about integration. You are not leaving the world behind. You are leaving behind the parts of yourself that were never truly yours. Healing begins when you realize that true freedom is not loud, it is steady, it is quiet, it is the unshakable knowing that you belong to yourself. And in that wholeness, you become the one thing society cannot control: a soul awakened. Solitude is often misunderstood. In today's culture of constant stimulation, choosing to be alone is seen as a withdrawal from life. But in truth, the man who turns inward is not escaping the world, he is descending into himself. In the quiet space that remains when the noise fades, he meets the parts of himself he was taught to hide, the anger he never expressed, the fear he always suppressed, the grief he pretended wasn't there. These forgotten fragments are what Jung called the shadow, the unloved, unaccepted pieces of the psyche that live in darkness until we dare to look. In recent years, many societies have been facing a silent epidemic: burnout, emotional exhaustion, and a growing sense of disconnection. People move through life feeling numb, overwhelmed, and unable to understand why. Beneath this collective unrest lies a deeper truth. We are haunted not by the world, but by what we refuse to face within ourselves. The wounds we inherited, the shame we buried, and the masks we wear to survive. These inner ghosts do not go away by ignoring them. They only grow louder. Carl Jung warned that the path to healing does not begin with light, but with courage. Courage to face what we have denied. Courage to sit with discomfort rather than distract from it. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And this is what solitude offers: the space to bring light to the unseen. Those who walk into their own darkness are not broken, they are brave. They are choosing truth over comfort, wholeness over performance. They are no longer afraid of what they might find inside, because they understand that the shadow, once integrated, becomes strength. In a world that teaches you to look outward for healing, the man who turns inward becomes a quiet revolution. He is no longer running, he is returning to the self he abandoned long ago. And in that sacred return, healing begins. In a world drowning in noise, silence feels foreign. Every moment is filled with scrolling, streaming, replying, and reacting. We are endlessly connected, yet deeply estranged from others and from ourselves. Today, countless people wake up with anxiety, fall asleep feeling numb, and spend the hours in between, chasing distraction to avoid the silence within. But beneath the clutter lies something sacred, a voice that has been waiting patiently to be heard. It is the voice of yourself, the true you beneath the layers of expectation, pain, and programming. Carl Jung believed that the most important conversations are the ones we have within, not the rehearsed ones we imagine with others, but the raw, honest dialogues we dare to initiate with our own soul. Who am I when no one is watching? What am I running from? What do I truly desire? These questions, uncomfortable as they may be, are not signs of despair. They are invitations. Invitations to step off the stage of the persona and into the quiet temple of inner truth. Today's culture often confuses external validation with self-worth. But Jung taught that healing begins the moment we stop asking the world who we are and start listening inward. In solitude, you begin to untangle what is truly yours from what was placed upon you. You realize some of your beliefs are not your own. Some of your dreams were handed to you. Some of your fears were inherited. This process is not about shame, it is about awakening. It is about reclaiming what was lost in the noise. The man who can sit with himself and not run is dangerous to a world addicted to avoidance. He has made peace with his contradictions. He is not perfect, but he is whole, and this wholeness does not come from performance, but from presence. The more you engage in this inner dialogue, the clearer your path becomes. Life stops being a reaction and starts becoming a response. This is the essence of individuation, when you begin to live not from borrowed scripts, but from your authentic center. And from this center, healing is no longer an idea, it becomes a way of being. There comes a moment in every awakening soul's journey when the outer script no longer fits. You start to question why you believe what you believe. You begin to feel the quiet dissonance between the life you're living and the one that truly resonates with your inner truth. For many today, the deeper crisis is not about success or failure, but about a quiet emptiness, a loss of meaning that no achievement can fill. We are not suffering from a lack of information. We are suffering from inherited expectations that no longer speak to the depth of who we are becoming. From childhood, we are fed values like tradition, obedience, and ambition, often without understanding their origins. Whether from family systems, religious doctrine, political identity, or cultural narratives, we are subtly conditioned to conform to beliefs we never consciously chose. Jung saw this as the moment the self begins to awaken. It is the withdrawal of psychic energy from the persona, the mask designed to please others, and the return of that energy back to your own soul. This is the spark of individuation. To reclaim your values is not to rebel for the sake of rebellion. It is to begin the sacred work of asking, is this mine, or was this handed to me? You start to unlearn the myths that equate silence with respect, people-pleasing with love, and productivity with self-worth. And this unlearning is not easy. It may cause friction in your relationships. It may feel like a loss, but it is actually the first taste of personal freedom. Carl Jung understood that becoming whole requires courage, the courage to dismantle false beliefs and rebuild your life from the inside out. When you no longer outsource your morals to the group, you become grounded in your own ethical center. You no longer act out of fear or guilt, but from conviction and clarity. You are no longer manipulated by slogans, dogma, or peer pressure, because you now have a compass within. Healing begins when your values are no longer reactions to the past, but declarations of the self. And when your actions align with your essence, peace follows. You are not abandoning your roots. You are tending to the soil where your own truth can finally grow. In a world that moves at the speed of distraction, being alone has become a cause for alarm. People often associate solitude with failure or abandonment, as if being without constant connection signals something is broken. In today's world, this confusion is amplified by a culture that celebrates visibility more than introspection, encouraging performance over presence and noise over depth. If you are not posting, talking, replying, or performing, then the assumption is that you are somehow not fully living. But Carl Jung would argue the opposite. He believed that solitude is not the absence of life. It is the space where life finally begins to speak to you. Loneliness and solitude may look alike from the outside, but they arise from entirely different places within. Loneliness is the cry of an ego, disconnected from meaning. It is the ache of wanting someone to fill a void we do not yet understand. Solitude, on the other hand, is the stillness of a soul that is beginning to listen. It is not born from lack, but from fullness. It is not about closing off the world, but about finally tuning into the voice that has long been drowned out by noise. Jung taught that in this stillness, something remarkable happens. The self begins to emerge. Not the version shaped by what others want to see, but the one that has existed beneath all the masks. And it is here, in this silence, that true healing begins. Because you are no longer outsourcing your worth to others' attention. You are no longer mistaken for identity. You are coming home to yourself. For many in midlife, this realization is both liberating and painful. Relationships that once felt like lifelines now feel suffocating. Social roles that once brought pride now feel hollow. But this is not regression, it is awakening. To step into solitude with courage is to reclaim your energy, your presence, your clarity. It is not a retreat from the world. It is the quiet preparation to return with depth. Solitude does not isolate the mature soul, it refines it. It is not loneliness, it is a sacred space. And when you allow yourself to sit in that space without fear, you begin to realize you are not alone. You are simply aligned. Something subtle yet profound begins to shift when a person starts walking the path of individuation. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It often goes unnoticed by the outer world, but within, the soul begins to reorient itself. Not around others, but around truth. In a society overwhelmed by performance and pretense, this quiet psychological awakening is nothing short of radical. And Carl Jung recognized its signs with piercing clarity. He did not measure maturity by conformity or accolades. He measured it by inner resilience, the kind that makes you untouchable, not because you resist life, but because you are no longer hostage to it. The first sign is radical inner honesty. You stop lying to yourself just to maintain comfort. You face your wounds, your contradictions, and your projections with the courage to heal instead of hide. This honesty is not cruel, it is compassionate. It says, I see you, even to the parts you once disowned. In today's climate, where curated personas often overshadow genuine expression and truth is hidden beneath layers of performance, choosing authenticity becomes a quiet but radical act. The second sign is self-sourced values. No longer do you chase approval or bend your morals to fit in. You do what is right because it aligns with your essence, not because it earns applause. You begin to trust your inner compass more than collective opinion. This shift frees you from the exhausting cycle of external validation. The third sign is emotional autonomy. You no longer need someone to complete you or rescue your worth. You love deeply, but you do not abandon yourself to be loved. You can sit in solitude without shrinking and connect with others without losing your center. In a culture that profits from your dependency, this kind of self-possession is power. The fourth sign is intellectual courage. You allow yourself to think thoughts others avoid. You question what has always been accepted. You challenge the narratives that shaped your beliefs. Jung knew that awakening requires the ability to tolerate inner tension, the dissonance between who you were told to be and who you truly are. These 4 signs are not marks of separation, but signals that the self is rising. You are becoming psychologically whole, and in doing so, you are no longer easily shaken by the world. You are no longer ruled by fear. You are guided by depth. There is a quiet price for those who dare to walk away from what no longer resonates. In a world that values belonging over becoming, choosing authenticity often feels like exile. You will be misunderstood. People will label your silence as coldness, your clarity as arrogance, and your boundaries as rebellion. Friends who once celebrated your sameness may retreat when you no longer reflect their wounds. And those who built relationships with the version of you that was pleasing, agreeable, and self-abandoning may no longer recognize the person you are becoming. This is not cruelty, it is a transformation. And it comes at a cost. Carl Jung understood this intimately. He called it the loneliness of the individuation process, the necessary solitude that accompanies awakening. When you stop conforming to the unspoken rules of your upbringing, your social group, or your culture, you shake the very structure that once gave you a false sense of identity. The collective, in its unconsciousness, often punishes those who detach from it. But what appears as rejection is often a rite of passage. In today's climate, where division runs deep and groupthink often replaces personal thought, stepping into your own truth can feel like a risky and lonely act. Many stay silent to survive. They abandon their convictions to be accepted. But this is the slow erosion of the soul, the gradual forgetting of who you are in exchange for who others want you to be. And yet, something extraordinary happens when you dare to stand alone. What falls away is only what could not meet your deeper self. The friendships, roles, and patterns that crumble were built on a version of you that no longer exists. In their place, something sacred begins to emerge. A peace that is not dependent on agreement. A clarity that does not need permission. A love for self that no longer waits to be earned. Jung taught that awakening always begins in darkness, in the loss of what once made us feel secure. But from that void, a new self rises. Not the self designed to fit in, but the self created to be whole. And while the cost of non-conformity may be temporary isolation, the reward is something no crowd can give you. Your freedom, your truth, your soul, unbroken and finally seen. Carl Jung did not ask you to burn bridges or stand in defiance. He asked you to return to yourself, not to revolt, but to remember. Because the moment you no longer need anyone to tell you who you are, you step beyond the roles assigned to you and into the sacred space of co-creation. You stop reacting to life and begin participating in it, not as a fragment, not as a persona, but as a whole being. We live in a world obsessed with performance, with applause, with fitting into frames crafted by others. Yet the true artist of life is the one who dares to draw outside those frames. Jung called this the individuation process, the lifelong journey of integrating all that is within us. Not just the light we are proud to show, but also the shadow we fear others might reject. Only when you hold both with compassion can you offer something real to the world. The paradox is this: the more you become yourself, the more you serve others. Wholeness is not isolation. It is not detachment from love or connection. It is the soil in which genuine love grows. Because only when you are no longer dependent on others to feel seen can you truly see them. Only when your worth is not borrowed from the world can you love without needing to possess. The modern world is starved for this kind of presence. A grounded, authentic being who does not need to perform to be powerful. A presence that is grounded, honest, unshaken by opinion, and free from performance. We do not need more influences. We need more integrated souls. People who have walked through the fire of self-reclamation and emerged not bitter, but clear, not hardened, but awakened. When you become whole, you become a mirror that reflects truth. A calm in the chaos, a silent revolution. And make no mistake, this kind of inner freedom is rare, but it is exactly what the world longs for. Not more noise, not more masks, but the quiet power of a human being who has met themselves fully and chosen love anyway. So if you ever wondered whether your inner work matters, know this: every step you take toward your truth is a gift to humanity, because the world does not need more of who you were told to be. It needs the wholeness of who you truly are. If this message stirred something inside you, don't stop here. The next video will take you even deeper into the journey of healing, growth, and self-discovery. It might just be the breakthrough your soul has been waiting for. Tap into it now. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join a community committed to truth, transformation, and real inner change. You're not alone on this path. I'll meet you in the next video, where we continue becoming who we were always meant to be.